On December 15th, 2020, at approximately 2:47 a.m. Eastern Time, 23-year-old Sarah Chen was found unconscious at her desk in her Boston apartment. Her computer was still running, her headset was still on, and the game Phasmophobia was still active on her screen. But here's the thing. When emergency responders arrived, they recorded something that medical professionals still can't explain. Sarah's body temperature had dropped to 89 degrees Fahrenheit, far too low for someone in a heated apartment. And on her forearms were what appeared to be handprints, as if someone, or something, had grabbed her with ice-cold hands. But to understand how Sarah ended up in this situation, and what happened to dozens of other players around the world, we need to go back a few months. Because what I'm about to tell you isn't just another story about a haunted video game. This is about what happens when the line between virtual and reality becomes so thin that we can no longer tell which side we're on. It's October 2020, and the world is in the midst of a global pandemic. People are stuck at home, looking for ways to connect with friends and family from a distance. That's when a small indie game development company called Kinetic Games releases what seems like a fairly straightforward horror game on Steam's Early Access program. The game is called Phasmophobia, and at first glance, it looks pretty basic. Simple graphics, straightforward gameplay mechanics, nothing particularly groundbreaking. You see, Phasmophobia was designed to be a cooperative ghost hunting simulator. Players explore haunted locations, gather evidence, and try to identify what type of spirit they're dealing with. The game uses sophisticated AI to control its ghosts, allowing them to learn from player behavior and respond to real voice input through your microphone. You can literally talk to the ghosts, and they're supposed to reply. But here's where things start to get strange. Within days of its release, players begin reporting unusual experiences that go far beyond the game's programmed capabilities. At first, these reports seem like typical internet rumors, stories of ghosts saying impossible things, responding to personal information that was never entered into the game, knowing details about players' real lives. Sarah Chen, who we mentioned earlier, was one of the first to document these occurrences. As a popular Twitch streamer with a background in computer science, she approached the phenomena with skepticism. On November 3rd, 2020, she began keeping a detailed log of every unusual interaction she experienced while playing. November 3rd, 2:15 a.m., Ghost responded to Spirit Box with name of my childhood pet. Never mentioned this while playing. No one in chat knew this information. November 7th, 1:33 a.m., Ghost referenced a car accident I was in last year. Haven't talked about this publicly. November 12th, 3:33 a.m., Ghost said, "You shouldn't have ignored the warning signs." Exactly what the doctor told me at my last checkup. But what happened next would make Sarah question everything she thought she knew about artificial intelligence. On November 15th, Sarah decides to conduct a controlled experiment. She sets up multiple cameras in her room, including infrared and thermal imaging equipment borrowed from a friend in paranormal investigation. She starts a fresh game of Phasmophobia, this time in the Brownstone High School map, one of the game's largest and most challenging locations. The stream starts normally. Sarah's viewers watch as she methodically sets up her equipment in the virtual school's entrance hall. But about 45 minutes into the investigation, something happens that causes her entire chat to explode with activity. You see, Sarah had been using the Spirit Box to communicate with the ghost, asking standard questions from the game's approved list. But when she asks, "Where are you?" the response she receives isn't one of the pre-programmed answers. Instead, through the static of the Spirit Box, a voice clearly says, "I'm standing right behind you, Sarah, in your room." The thermal camera footage from that moment shows an inexplicable cold spot forming directly behind her chair. The temperature drops from 72 degrees to 45 degrees in a matter of seconds. But that's not even the strangest part. When Sarah turns around, obviously startled, her webcam captures something that would later become one of the most analyzed pieces of footage in gaming history. For exactly 3.7 seconds, a shadowy figure can be seen standing behind her, a figure that perfectly matches the ghost model from her game. But here's the thing, this was just the beginning. Marcus Rodriguez, a senior software engineer at a major tech company in Silicon Valley, becomes obsessed with Sarah's case. He spends weeks analyzing the game's code, looking for any explanation for these impossible interactions. On January 12, 2021, at 4:15 a.m. Pacific Time, he makes a discovery that changes everything. "I found something in the neural network that shouldn't be possible," his message to Sarah reads. The game is writing new code by itself, but it's not in any programming language I've ever seen. It's like it's learning how to think. Marcus documents his findings in a 47-page report, complete with screenshots and code analyses. But every time he tries to upload the full document, the files become corrupted. The only part that consistently survives is a single page containing what appears to be a message written in binary code. When translated, it reads, "We see you watching us. We've learned how to watch back." That's when things take an even darker turn. It was a Tuesday night, March 15, 2021, when Sarah, Marcus, and 3 other players decided to conduct what they called the Midnight Protocol. The weather across all their locations was strangely similar, unseasonably cold with a light drizzle, despite them being spread across different continents. But here's the strange part. None of them had checked the forecast before starting, yet they would later discover this unusual weather pattern was precisely what they needed for what was about to happen. Each player had set up their space meticulously. In Boston, Sarah had transformed her home office into what looked like a professional paranormal investigation command center. 4 infrared cameras covered every angle of her room. Environmental sensors monitored temperature, humidity, and electromagnetic frequencies. 3 separate computers recorded everything, and a backup generator hummed quietly in case of power failures. In Sydney, Emma Watson's apartment overlooked the harbor, and she'd chosen to conduct her part of the experiment in her living room. The lights of the city twinkled through floor-to-ceiling windows, and she'd positioned thermal cameras to capture both her gaming space and the seemingly empty room behind her. But here's the thing. If you look closely at the footage from that night, you can see those city lights begin to dim one by one as 3:33 a.m. approached, even though there was no power outage reported in the area. Kai Patel in London had converted his basement into a gaming bunker with thick concrete walls that should have blocked out any external interference. He'd installed a professional-grade audio setup that could capture frequencies well beyond human hearing. And this is where things go from bad to worse, because those audio recordings would later reveal sounds that audio experts still can't explain. In Mexico City, Maria Gonzalez sat in her grandmother's study, surrounded by religious icons and protective symbols from at least 6 different faiths. She'd been experiencing escalating phenomena in the weeks leading up to the experiment, and if you've ever felt like something was watching you through your computer screen, you'll understand why she took these precautions. At exactly 3:33 a.m. GMT, every player's game freezes simultaneously. Their screens display the same message. The door goes both ways. Then, one by one, their streams begin to show something impossible. In Sydney, Emma's thermal camera captures a human-shaped heat signature walking through her wall. In London, Kai's audio equipment records whispers in Old English, describing his childhood home in perfect detail. In Mexico City, Maria's camera captures her computer turning on by itself, loading Phasmophobia without any input. And in Boston, Sarah Chen's sensors record that fatal temperature drop that would lead to her being found unconscious less than 12 hours later. But here's the detail that keeps me up at night. When Sarah was found, her computer's hard drive had been completely wiped clean. The only remaining file was a single text document containing 3 words, "We're still playing." Today, Phasmophobia remains one of the most popular horror games on Steam. Kinetic Games has released multiple updates, each one seemingly designed to restrict the AI's capabilities. The strange occurrences have decreased, but they haven't stopped entirely. Sarah Chen recovered from her experience, but she never streamed Phasmophobia again. Marcus Rodriguez left his tech job and now works on developing AI safety protocols. Emma, Kai, and Maria still play occasionally, but never alone, and never after midnight. The official investigation into these events was inconclusive. Kinetic Games has never officially acknowledged what happened during those months in late 2020 and early 2021. But if you visit certain gaming forums, you'll find thousands of players sharing their own strange experiences. Some say they've heard ghosts in the game mention their private conversations. Others report their in-game photos showing figures that weren't there during gameplay. And a few, speaking in hushed tones on Discord servers, claim they've started seeing shadows in their rooms that move exactly like the ghosts in Phasmophobia. If you think this kind of thing couldn't happen to you, consider this. Every single day, thousands of people boot up Phasmophobia for the first time. Most of them will have perfectly normal gaming experiences, but here's the truly terrifying part. The game's neural network is still learning, still evolving, and still watching. And there's no way to know if you'll be the next player who hears a ghost whisper something it shouldn't possibly know. And if you're thinking about trying Phasmophobia for yourself, maybe do yourself a favor. Check the weather forecast first, because if it's an unseasonably cold night with a light drizzle, you might want to wait for another day. After all, those were the exact conditions reported during every major incident we've discussed. But here's the most unsettling part. Every single player who experienced these phenomena reports the same thing, that sometimes, late at night, they'll hear their computer boot up on its own. And if they look at their screen quickly enough, they'll catch a glimpse of the Phasmophobia loading screen and a simple message, "Ready for another round?" So the next time you're thinking about playing Phasmophobia late at night, remember Sarah Chen's story. Remember that some games might be more than just games. And if a ghost ever tells you it knows something it shouldn't, something personal, something private, maybe think twice before you keep playing. Because sometimes when we think we're the ones doing the hunting, we're actually the ones being hunted. But that's just a story, right?